Welcome back, chess fans. In today's video, we'll look at a game played by Bobby Fischer where he absolutely dismantled the dragon Sicilian, proving that this sharp opening might not be as fearsome as it is made out to be. So grab your popcorn and let's go. So the year is 1958, the location is Portorož, Slovenia, and here Bobby Fischer played against Bent Larsen, and he beat him in the Sicilian Dragon. As you know, Bobby Fischer famously said, "I do not believe in dragons," and here he is proving that dragon Sicilian is definitely not the best choice when it comes to all the Sicilian variations. So here, Bobby Fischer opens up with e4, best by test, c5, knight to f3, pawn to d6, and then pawn to d4, Fischer opting for the open Sicilian. So c captures d4, knight captures d4, and knight to f6, knight to c3 played by white, and here g6. And this is the beginning of the dragon variation of the Sicilian defense. Here Fischer chooses bishop to e3, bishop to g7, pawn to f3. Pawn to f3 always useful when it comes to stopping knight g4, because knight g4 and then this exchange on e3 is always beneficial for the black pieces in the dragon positions. So of course f3 prevents that. Here black castles, queen to d2, knight to c6, and then bishop to c4 played by Fischer. Fischer really liked these lines with bishop to c4. It gave him a lot of attacking opportunities on this diagonal, and actually you're going to see in a couple of moves how he was able to use this bishop to create various threats on the black king. So knight captures on d4, bishop captures on d4, and then bishop to e6 played by black, bishop back to b3, queen to a5, and then queenside castles by Fischer, and b5 played by Bent Larsen, trying to attack on this side of the board. Fischer goes king to b1, b4, and then knight to d5. Right now we're entering a middle game, or we are already in the middle game. We have left the opening, and what Fischer is going to do is try to attack black on the king side, and what black is going to try to do is try to attack on the queen side. However, if you have played the dragon Sicilian, or if one of you is a very high rated player, you're probably going to know that usually white has a slight advantage in these positions, because white is always going to be slightly faster in these sorts of attacks. Dragon Sicilian is not exactly the most engine accurate opening. It's a very good practical weapon for a very long time on the rating ladder, but once you get to grandmaster level and certainly on Fischer's level, dragon is not a great choice to play against him. So here bishop captures on d5 was played, bishop captures on d5, and then rook to c8 chosen by Bent Larsen. Bishop simply goes back to reinforce everything, and also now this exchange is not allowed. Knight's not taking on d5 ever. And then rook to c7 played by black, h4. Fischer wants to start an attack on the king side, queen to b5, h5, and here Fischer is sacrificing a pawn, but this pawn really should not be accepted. If the pawn is accepted, this just loses immediately because bishop captures on g7. If the king captures on g7, there's a very easy g4, knight goes back to f6, queen to h6 check, king g8, and there's actually g5, and after g5 the knight has to move again. There's only one good move here, which is, well, it's not a good move because it still loses, but there's one practical try in this position, which is knight to h5, but this also fails to a simple rook takes h5, pawn takes h5. This is a brilliant move, by the way. Pawn takes h5, and this move g6, and here we see the power of this bishop. This bishop on b3 is pinning the f7 pawn to the king. The only way to recapture this pawn, or the only way to deal with this checkmate threat, is to capture the pawn on g6. But if you capture, queen simply captures. As we said, this pawn is pinned. King goes to h8, queen h6, king g8, rook to g1, queen g5, and then rook takes g5, and this is checkmate. So going back, this is what happens if this move is played. If king captures, if the knight captures, it's very similar, but you just start with queen to h6, and then you literally transpose back into the same line here. So it's exactly the same thing pretty much with a different order. Okay, so that's not what happened though. This pawn was not captured, and instead of that, black played rook to c8. And here Fischer captured on g6, pawn captures on g6, and here Fischer plays g4. G4 is actually one of the top moves, but computer finds a much stronger move here, which is rook to h6, rook to h6 here, which straight up attacks this pawn. And if this pawn is defended with e6, blocking this bishop, then there is rook to h1, and the attack continues on the h file. So this is a very, very interesting attacking game, but this is not what happened in the game. Instead of that, Fischer just chose to play g4, which is also a very decent move. Mistake here is a bit of an exaggeration by the game review. A5 chosen by black, and then g5 chosen by Fischer. Knight to h5, and now Fischer sacrifices rook. Rook takes h5, taking the knight, and after g takes h5, he pushes the pawn to g6, once again using this very powerful light square bishop to pressure this pawn on f7 with the help of the pawn. So here e5 is played, but this doesn't really do anything because after g takes f7, which is a check, king has to move, and bishop goes back to e3. And here the problem is Fischer is threatening bishop to h6, and then just bringing his pieces like a rook g1, queen h5, and simply checkmating the black king here. So something has to be done. So Bent Larsen tried to play d5 in order to try something in the position, and after pawn takes d5, rook takes f7, here Fischer played d6, opening up the bishop once again, and after rook takes f6, here he played bishop to g5, and after queen to b7, he just simply captured the rook on f6, and we get opposite color bishops. And as we know, opposite color bishops favor the attacking player when it's the middle game. When it's the end game, it's usually a draw, but in the middle game, whoever is attacking is going to be at an advantage if there's opposite color bishops on the board. So here Fischer played d7, rook to d8, and after queen to d6 here, Bent Larsen resigned the game. There's nothing to be done here, to be honest. If this is blocked, if this check is blocked, then queen h6 is simply mate in one. If something else, for example, king to g7, trying to run away, yeah, just simply rook g1, and where do you go, right? If you go king to h7, simply queen takes f6, and let's say here if rook takes, this is checkmate, for example, bishop to g8, which is a funny move. If queen takes, this also leads to mate in a couple of moves, queen f6, and then queen takes g7. This is also a forced checkmate that can occur on the board. So I think this is a very nice attacking game by Bobby Fischer, where he destroyed the dragon Sicilian, and he famously said, "I do not believe in dragons," and here he is proving it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.